Today we have a very special show with a very special group of gentlemen who have decided to join us tonight. We are VODPOD Media, located in the heart of the east side of San Antonio. We are a Black-owned production company. And before we get started, I would like to give each guest an opportunity to introduce themselves. So we'll start to my right here.
My name is Warren Ganues, affectionately known as Warren G, the host of the Young Millionaire and Training podcast.
Thank you for joining us, Warren. And I'm glad you said your name because I was saying Ganues. I made it up. So Ganues.
Yeah, as long as they put it right on the check, we good.
Okay, cool. Nice to have you.
Oh, me?
Yes,
Okay.
you.
My name is Wardell Picquet. I am an artist, graphic designer, illustrator, web designer, and teacher.
Thank you for joining us.
Me? Kelvin Williams. I go by KK, host of Social Irspnsbl podcast.
And we go way back. We went to
Way
middle
back.
school together, or high school.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here,
Can't tell
KK.
my age.
My name is Duane Snape. I am the owner and lead therapist at Chosen for Hope Counseling here in San Antonio, Texas. We are a group, wellness center, behavioral health, clinicians of color here in San Antonio.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us. I do have to say before we get started, our show today was sponsored by Rooted Vegan Cuisine, which kind of ties into the topic of health. We're speaking specifically about mental health, but we know that what we put into our body affects our health as well. So thank you to Rooted Vegan for supplying us with sustenance. So today's show is specifically about mental health, and initially I wanted to say in the Black community, but I have found that it's still very much stigmatized for Black men to speak about feelings, emotions, the way things affect, Black men mentally. So kind of the catalyst for this was an episode a couple of weeks back, and I interviewed two 19-year-old girls who are both in college, both sophomores. And when I asked both of them what their takeaway was and what they wanted to leave with the audience, they both mentioned, two 19-year-old girls both mentioned that they wished more men in our community would be open to things like going to therapy and, healing and that sort of thing. And then immediately after that show, there was an unfortunate incident where a member of our larger community, a dancer, Twitch, decided that he did not want to be here with us anymore. And I'm curious if any of you would like to speak about how seeing something like that playing out in the media, how that impacted you.
Well, let me first say thank you for this opportunity, this forum. It's really important, especially for our community. We use the term or word community. Community today is different than it was 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Because of technology, our community is connected. And so you could have somebody in Jamaica or Africa or China connected to somebody here in San Antonio, Texas. Mm-hmm. And so they could say things that are harsh or unforgiving, and someone can read this, and because they don't have the ability or they're not able to turn it off, it impacts them negatively. Mm-hmm. And so community is not just in our town, in our family, in our home. It's larger, like you said. And it's really important for us to understand that we should have an internal filter for that. Because everything that's coming in is not good for us. And it's up to us to be able to filter that. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the gathering of when you have Black men's brothers, because it is important for us. Our mental wellness and health is critical to our everyday life. Very important.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak to that incident in particular? If not, we can move past it because we have a lot to talk about. But I was just curious how, being a Black man and seeing something like that play out in the media, how that may have landed with you.
Yeah, no, for me, as I shared with you, Kirsten, when you reached out, I actually missed it and didn't even see it on social media because I was kind of going through the mental health battle of my life, and I was very isolated and reserved. And people actually started reaching out to me. Some of the people around me that knew what I was going through were reaching out to me because they saw him and they were like, we want to make sure that you're really okay, I know you're going through it, and I know you're okay. And although I was never suicidal, I was extremely isolated. Like you said, because I have a large social media presence, and I wasn't even on social media to see when it happened. So for me, it was really a wake-up call. Like, I have to make sure that I get this under control, because I don't feel like I'm better than anyone else, and it could impact me the exact same way.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I feel very fortunate that all of you all decided to be here today, because everyone was almost immediately like, yes, of course. I know that when I reached out to you, you didn't even hesitate. You were like, yes, absolutely, I'm going through, something myself. So I guess what I want to ask you, Warren, is what was the point where you knew, like, personally, like, I need to do something because I'm not 100%, I'm not well?
Yeah, no,
what was the catalyst for that?
So it took me maybe 2 or 3 months to even get to that point where I knew that this was back in October, somewhere around the about 10th or 11th of October. I had a panic attack while I was working. I went into work that morning, regularly, my phone rings, and I just totally shut down, had a total anxiety attack, kind of laid in the bed, and I was like, babe, I got to do something. So I laid in the bed. She found me a therapist, and I started going to therapy. But what it actually took me, because she had been telling me that I was different, and I was starting to pull back. I was starting to not act like myself, but kind of to that stigmatized standpoint that we have. It was, no, I figured it out. I pushed through. That's the type of personality that I have anyway. But it still took me to see that I had lost 17 pounds because I didn't have an appetite. I wasn't sleeping. I was tired. For me to actually justify me taking some time away for myself, I still had to, in my mind, be like, no, it's a physical ailment, excuse me.
Right.
Like, oh no, I'm losing weight. So yeah, something has to actually be wrong with me, not actually prioritizing my mental health. So that was kind of my wake up call when I saw that I had lost 17 pounds. I was getting ready to go to a wedding, and my wife was like, why don't you wear this belt? And I was like, well, I can't fit the belt. It's too big or it's too small. And I put the belt on and it fit. And I was like, how did I do that? And then I went and got on the scale and saw that I was down 17 pounds. And I hadn't done anything different in my life on it. So that was kind of my wake-up call.
Yeah. Do you feel, well, I guess I can ask this to everyone, being that you are Black men, do you feel sort of like you have to wait until things get to the edge, to the precipice where you're so far gone before you ask for help? Or have any of you had a moment in your life where you just felt something at the onset and you're like, okay, something's a little bit off? Because I think in our communities, there's more of a tendency to wait until it's almost dire, until it's like life-threatening or very severely damaging.
Or in our communities, there's a thing where we were not taught to recognize that that's what was going on, that there is a situation going on where we need to, we need help. I'm probably a little bit older than everybody here, but so I'm speaking from an older point. But, the thing was, back in the day, you need to get up and go to work. That's what you're being lazy. Or you need Jesus. You need to go to church. So it's like, we didn't, just like I was saying with you, like we don't know about finance. We don't know, we weren't taught that. We weren't taught if you're feeling a certain way, go do a particular thing about it. And with young, Black men, young Black boys, we don't even taught about feelings, period. You're not supposed to be feeling anything, get strong.
Right.
So there's that working. There's years of stuff like that working against you. Somebody could not even know that they're in a situation where they need to go seek help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me say this. Thank you for sharing that. The therapist is coming out of you, right? Because someone inevitably, there'll be a brother, a man, listening to this podcast, and he's going to hear that you had a panic attack. And you won't believe how many of us, we either don't believe and understand in the value of not just therapy, of communicating with each other at a humanistic level, on just real talk, just talking with someone. And so there's value in that. I tell people, children, adults, whoever will listen, that we're not containers, right? We're vessels. So when you eat something, you naturally, your body's going to expel it. Well, it's the same thing with our emotions. We take so much in every single day. We need to purge that stuff. And some of the toxins that we have in our body, we got to get rid of it. And we do that by connecting and communicating and talking with each other. So it was really important. And that you shared, look, I had a panic attack, right? Most people don't even understand what that is, right? If you ask someone in our community, you know, they might not even be able to formulate, but I can, as sure as we're all sitting here today, can attest to, I'm sure that there are men who felt the way you feel. Their heart's beating fast. Their palms are sweaty. They feel like there's a impending doom or they're going to die every single day. And so we've been taught, like my brother was saying, to not acknowledge or be able to sit with our feelings. That's a concept that just we don't even understand. And so talking about it is just like, oh, not for a little boy. You're not going to talk about how you feel.
So is that something, I'm curious, I have a son, he's 18 now, not my baby anymore, but I know that I was very conscious to like, let's talk about our feelings, so much to the point it's like, you know, I don't want to talk about my feelings anymore. But I've been told that that was a little bit like of an anomaly for me to constantly be encouraging him. But I think, you know, you said you're old. I think we're all in the same age range. And so I'm curious, is that something that you all experienced as boys? Did you feel like is maybe that where it started, where you just can't express yourselves?
Well, it starts with, you know, crying when you're hurt. Because you're told, you know, don't cry. Or you're told, you know, you're called a sissy. Or, you know, you're told make sure you don't do anything for that. So it starts at that young age, and then you start building those walls, which don't need to be there.
Right.
And then, like I said, you don't recognize stuff. Me in particular, or one of the other things that it was called within our community is moody. But yeah, moody.
Or sometimey.
Yeah, so I started recognizing at an early age when I felt, you know, quote unquote moody. So what I would do is I would isolate myself because I knew that whatever I was feeling was not the word wrong, but that it's something that could cause problems. And I have the philosophy that nobody should have to suffer because of something that I'm going through. So until I can even things out, I would just isolate myself. But like I said, moodiness. If I get in a particular mood and I'm like, okay, well, I shouldn't be around people.
So you kind of got conditioned to not acknowledge how you felt so you could placate other people and make them comfortable.
Right.
And not rock the boat too much. Yeah, okay.
Can I ask you something? How often, how hard is it to get somebody to come to therapy?
Great question. That's an individual. It's an individual question, an individual process for all of us. Depends on what you're going through, but as a whole, collectively, for us, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it's difficult. I just now started seeing more men and more children. I like to say I'm a unicorn, because not only am I a black male therapist, I'm also a play therapist. So I'm trained to work with kids with various different issues, trauma, depression, etc. And so I'm just now seeing the awareness and acknowledging of men of color, Hispanics and African Americans, understanding that, okay, I got to go talk to someone, and there's value in that. We're not, like you were saying, that's not a part of what we are informed in growing up. It's not a part of what our parents teach us: finances, wellness, mental health. So people are now coming aware of it.
I was asking because we take on a lot. So like personally, like not a lot of people know, I lost my sight. So I was dealing with my sight for maybe 6 months. Like in July, I just went completely blind. And didn't know why. I kept seeing doctor after doctor after doctor. Then I'm going through a separation at home. I just had a lot of stuff going on. So I just went on Facebook Live one day and just let it out. And I would get messages from Kirsten. I mean, that's when I knew I was like, I need to see somebody, you know. I finally got my sight back. I mean, it was just a lot to deal with. Like, and you still have to be a father, you know. Everybody come to you with their problems. Like, you ask somebody how they doing, like, you want somebody, I'm good. But when they actually say they going through something, you're like, oh, now I gotta take on this. Like, I got my own stuff going on. I was just asking to ask, you know, not to.
Just for the ceremony.
Yes. It just, everything just kept compiling. I just knew I had to see somebody, so.
Now it's more, it's okay to say you're not okay, or it's beginning to become that. It's really important that we're able to say, if you're not doing okay, say you're not okay.
And it's okay to, yeah.
And that's absolutely.
And I think too, the right people, like there will be people that you say, I'm not doing so well, and they're like, okay, great, see you, talk to you later. And then there will be people who really do pause and listen and see how they can help you, even if it's just lending an ear. So I think, and you can tell me if this is correct or not, but I think it also helps when you're going through something, it helps you identify who you need to keep around.
Definitely.
And who you can trust.
Definitely, but that's not therapy though.
No, not at all.
Right,
but definitely that is something that it's just important when you are going through something. I think you don't have to have everybody around you, because not everyone's energy is the best. But I wanted to ask you, so is therapy something you're doing actively now?
Well, I'm just talking with somebody who's not actually a therapist, but I mean, it's helping.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
I just let stuff out, you know. I just been holding on so much stuff. Like you think you just I wake up one day I'm fine, but you're really not fine.
Yeah.
I sit in my car. I've been in my car. I could just have a regular day. I just bust out crying. And I just like, I know something's wrong with me.
Think about it like I was sharing with you earlier. When you eat food, right? Your body extrapolates what it needs to take from it, and then it expels the waste.
Yeah.
So we're physical, emotional / intellectual, and spiritual beings. And as we feed each part of those, we still need to go through the process of those things coming out of us. So when you have life going on, when you got a job, when you have a family, when you have socio-economical stresses, we've been through COVID. It seems like a natural disaster is up right around the corner. 2023 just started.
2023 better behave.
So, well, no, you better be ready for what 2023 has in store.
Right.
And you jinxed it by saying that. So.
We need to be able to connect with each other no matter what tomorrow is going to throw at us, right? And so it's really important that we value the things that can help us cope with life, because life is not going to stop. Yeah.
And I want to get back to some of those coping modalities, but I want to just commend you for even just admitting that you cried on air.
My man.
Because that's huge. No, really though, that's huge. And I think a lot of people, not just men, a lot of people are even afraid to say they cried. There have been studies that have been done though, and you're probably familiar with them. I can't call them by name, but they talk about the different chemical properties and makeup of tears. So you can cry from, because you didn't get your way and the tears look a certain way chemically. You can cry from grief and the tears look a certain way.
Oxytocin.
So yes, so there's a reason why we need to get that out. Like
it's healing factor in your tears, your tear ducts. I was with a father and son today, and I asked the son, I was like, "When's the last time you cried?" He was like, I was like, "It's okay." Then I asked the dad, I was like, "When's the last time you cried?" He was like, I was like, "That's okay. When's the last time your son saw you cry?" And I was just went on to show them, and the father was saying how he didn't have a good connection with his dad. And and I was showing the son, or trying to allow the son to see actually the importance of connecting with his father and being vulnerable, having vulnerable moments with his dad. Human moments. Doesn't take big conversations, human moments.
Right.
But yeah, crying is healing. Like all tears aren't equal.
Right.
So like God created us when like oftentimes when I get a military man or a man, we're all tough and big, right? And it takes understanding, like you have those tear ducts for a reason, right? Like your skin breathes, you eat food, your body is there's a book called Your Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
And your body remembers all of these things, even when we're small, babies. So really important that we try to understand who we are and not try to not suppress a feeling or emotion.
Right. And because I'm a woman, so I'm a minority here right now, I feel like, this conversation might go a little bit differently if I was a male host. But I'm curious about something. How do you all navigate, like, friendships with other men, and how important is that to you? Like,
I still understand the tear stuff for a while.
okay, we can go back to.
I was like waiting for my turn to come around.
Oh well, then let's go back to it. This is y'all's show. I'm just here to kind of keep it. What would you like to?
When I remember in was it the late 70s or the 80s when they'd already done the studies that said that women lived on average 7 years longer than men, but then somewhere around then they were saying that it was because women cried. That was one of the things, because they didn't hold stuff in, which I was like that. But that was said, but then we didn't do anything with it. We didn't say, okay, everybody, let it out. We didn't say that. But that little scientific fact was put out and it was done. I also wanted to add that before going to see Wakanda Forever, a friend, somebody on Facebook had put a post that said that you will cry 5 times. I cried 9 times about that movie because it was just that touching.
That was me and the Woman King. Whole movie. So, I'm sorry, I feel like you were going to say something. I heard like the.
See, I hated that movie.
9 times.
I want to speak to like how it takes a dark place, it takes a theater
to give you
feel
permission
safe.
to.
Cover of Darkness.
Because oftentimes, I'm glad that you used that word, sometimes we need permission to heal. Sometimes we got to tell ourselves, it's okay for me to do this. And even though we're in a room full of people, it's dark. And we believe no one's seeing us. And so we have to tell ourselves, go to your private space, your closet, your room, and start there, right? A lot of times helpers need help too. So if you're a leader, you're a man, you're a father, a husband, you have to take care of yourself if your family's looking for you, looking towards you. Got to start with you. Absolutely.
Which goes back to that, saying "ow" in public thing. You have to have permission or whatever. Not being, being told you can't do that. So, but yeah, I didn't think about that. Dark place, movie theater.
So your recommendation is that people create that sanctuary in their own home deliberately, so you don't have to wait till you go to a movie to let it all out.
Absolutely.
Kind of on that same point, something that I was dealing with that I found out through therapy in the last few months. One of my core beliefs that even has me sitting here today is I'm not enough. And I always felt like I wasn't enough. Even the ambition and the things that I'm doing, a lot of that was me trying to prove that I was enough. And that was what was running me for so long. And kind of to your point about giving permission, that was a conversation I had recently with my wife where I don't complain about things, but it was because I didn't think my complaints were worthy of anything. It's like I should just be happy for what I have.
Right. Like somebody else has it worse than I do,
exactly.
So I shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, who am I to complain? Like, I'm just me. I'm just a regular person. and not understanding you still get your just due. You're still allowed to have your worth. You can have those conversations and things of that nature. And then also just kind of to the young boy point, I wanted to say that one of the things from like a very basic human standpoint, like we as men, we start competition from like early, like a super early age, and everything is bigger, faster, stronger. Don't show your weakness. Don't let anybody know where you're weak at. And that gets so ingrained in us. Because I know that was me. Like my dad, it was always, you know, what you crying for? Like, why you crying?
Right.
What is
It hurt.
Yeah, like, right.
Especially when we play sports, like, you gonna cry, you gonna chill, you gonna play football, like, oh my God.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah, you have a cracked rib.
Yeah.
It's like, walk it
it
off.
hurt.
Right.
Puts me tough in my
Put some
body.
dirt on it.
Like,
Right.
What's really good is that, like, as for a man, we get our validations by what we do.
Yep.
And if we don't get or receive affirmation or words of encouragement and thank yous from the people that we're doing the things for, we start to question, are we good enough? Are we doing enough?
Yeah, we do.
Is what I'm doing the right thing? And so there's that dialogue, monologue that goes on in your head. And it speaks to our self-worth, our value, and how we esteem ourselves. And so that's a challenge for us. So you got to tell yourself, I am enough, and it's not what I'm doing, and it impacts our relationships. You with a partner, your partner's not affirming you, telling you, you know, thank you for this. Like, we almost have to receive that daily. Man, society, we're not set up. We don't encourage our men, right? And so we struggle with that, right? I don't care what level the man is at, what his financial situation is. He wants to hear that he's loved, he's respected. You did a good job today. Brother waking up early in the morning to go, whether he worked for UPS or the sanitation department or wherever, comes home, he wants to be validated too.
So I think this is an opportunity where I can remind my sisters that, you know, it's very important. I mean, we're talking about mental health among Black men, but it is very important for us to affirm the men in our communities. I have a question. How do you feel about, so I have a friend who lives in Mexico, a Black man, and, you know, I was told that I'm annoyingly positive. How do you feel about doing things to affirm yourself, like getting up every day and saying affirmations to yourself in the mirror? I feel like everyone should do that, but I think that sometimes when I suggest that to men, I get a little pushback.
That's where it should start.
Yeah, I agree.
When your feet touch the ground, or when you open your eyes, or if you wake up in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock. For me, I thank God that I'm getting that next breath, because that next breath is not promised to me.
Right.
And so I'm appreciative of that, in spite of and despite of what I'm going through.
Right. Or I am enough.
Yeah.
Regardless of anything else that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And is mandatory, because that's something that I've had to do, because what was kind of going in, I know you can kind of speak to it, I was dealing with a lot of cognitive distortions about myself. And what kind of, just in briefing, you might want to give a better example, but cognitive distortions is when you just distort reality. Essentially, your thoughts are not really based in fact. It's just based on your opinion, which are typically negative.
Right.
And so me learning how to use those positive affirmations to reaffirm myself and get myself back on the correct path. If, like you said, my wife didn't say, oh, well, thank you for taking the trash out, that doesn't mean that I didn't do something good.
Right.
Yeah, like she just maybe didn't notice.
Right.
Yeah, like it didn't mean anything. I can't automatically assume that it was this or it was that or whatever the case may be.
Here's the cultural piece, and I don't mean to but I want to speak to. Here's the
No,
cultural
this is
piece.
y'all's show. I'm just.
Here's the cultural piece to that. It's not just like an opinion. Oftentimes, it's the family community that we've come out. Say you a single mother, and you saying to your son or your daughter, "You're not this," or "You ain't never gonna be this," or "Your daddy wasn't this," or she talks negatively to herself, and so
I'm so fat. Why can't I lose this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what you hear. That's what you end up modeling. We, as parents, adults, for children, we're modeling those behaviors. It's not do as I say, it's do as I do.
Right.
The kids are going to do what you do. So you're modeling that behavior. So oftentimes it comes from broken relationships, or it comes from our parents or our Genesis family.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we get those maladaptive or those negative thoughts and behaviors.
I have a question for you, KK, because your babies are young, right?
No, mine are old.
Really? You got old kids?
28, 21, and 14.
Oh, you have a 14-year-old. So my question for you, I think, is when you realized that you were losing your sight or you had lost your sight, did you feel like for your 14-year-old, that you had to pretend everything was okay?
I never told her.
So that's a yes.
I
Okay.
never, until I never told her. I told the older two. I mean, she would know things were different because I stopped driving. Like, I wasn't going to work every day. Like, she was like, everything okay? And when I finally did tell her, before I got the diagnosis and they told me how they can cure or help me, I told her what was going on with me, and she just broke down. I was like, that was the crazy, like the scariest thing to me, because she was like, "You're never gonna see me. You're never gonna." I was like, don't think like that. Like, they gonna fix my eyes. I'm gonna be good. And that was just, I've never, to see her face, it was just, I felt like I disappointed her. It was just like, it was another blow to me. I was just like.
That you felt like as a father you had to
Protect her from
rather-
me, yeah, from
Right.
yeah. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to tell her. I just held so much from her. So,
Yeah.
but the older two, like my son is 21, so he, like it was so bad to where I couldn't walk to the door without him guiding me to the door because I couldn't see anything. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, that makes it. Do you need help with that?
Did it fall?
It's just leaning over.
I think
y'all.
it's okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But yeah.
Okay. So, since you're sort of not sort of, you are the expert here. So, what would you suggest for like men who are fathers and husbands and breadwinners dealing with like the family dynamic when they hit a wall and when something happens, navigating the relationships with, people in the family, the ones that are closest to you? Because I do know that we tend to push people away that are closest to us. And that's not even like a male thing. That's just, most of us don't want to be a bother. We don't want to impose on people.
So there's no cookie cutter
Of course.
approach or thing you can do. You can start and begin by being vulnerable, but then family dynamics are different. So
Yeah.
if you are a man who hasn't spoken at all, doesn't speak at all, you're like your dad or your mom or the people who raised you, and you just shut down and you don't talk. Start with talking, with your kids. Usually, I say speak to kids because it's easier sometimes. Not all the time, but for the most part, because our defenses are down. And oftentimes I try to help parents coach them to teach to their children. As adults, we're just used to giving orders, barking out orders and directions. And we don't put ourselves in the mind frame of a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old or a teenager. And so we're always at odds instead of listening. What's the term? Seek first to understand before you're understood. We should approach conversation and communication like that, by listening. I like to help people to understand, you don't just listen with your ears. That's why I have people hold hands and touch and connect, because your whole body is actually listening. Your whole body is actually communicating.
Right.
All of your energy is working. Your body's a unit. It's not just individual pieces. Your body is a whole organism that's working together, right? And so you collectively and masterfully, how God created us, we're just doing that instinctively.
Right.
We're breathing. No one here is thinking about their breathing or their next breath, right? And so it's really important that when we're communicating, we're really engaged fully.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard because the other person, they're not trying to hear you, and you got history, and then there's the conflict and the back and forth, and so you can't communicate. But if you really look at it and approach it with an open heart and an open mind, you can communicate.
Yeah. You said something. Go
I
ahead.
don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Something to add to that you probably can speak to also that helped me out a lot was not only communicating, but building my emotional vocabulary so that you can actually really communicate. And that can be something just as simple as, instead of saying it hurt my feelings, yes, I'm hurt, but I'm disappointed. And then it turns into, well, why are you disappointed? Oh, I created some expectations. You never agreed to those expectations. I never even brought them up to you, but I expected it from you. Kind of going back like the trash thing again. I expected you to say thank you when I took out the trash, but I never told you that.
Right.
How would you know if I never told you that? But if I just say it hurt my feelings because you didn't say thank you, why did that hurt your feelings? Well, I was disappointed because I did something that I saw that needed to be done without prompting, and I expected you to say thank you for that because you know everything that I have going on right now.
Right.
And like fully communicating what you're feeling and not keeping it broad, because one of the things that I was dealing with that I had to apologize to my wife for, which was odd to me because in my mind, I'm the one going through something, but
Right.
I wasn't communicating fully. And by the time it got to her, I had held it in so long that I was coming at her angry and she was just matching my energy. And I'm like, why you mad? I'm the one that's depressed. Yeah, like, why you mad at me? And you know, that kind of thing. And so learning how to increase that emotional vocabulary was really big for me.
Yeah, that's important. I hear the term emotional intelligence a lot, and it's kind of been like, now people are sort of just throwing it around as a catchphrase, but that's what you were doing, is you were sharpening your emotional intelligence so that you could communicate effectively and be understood, because that's the whole point. That's why we communicate, so that, you know, we can be understood.
But again, we learn those behaviors.
Absolutely.
There's a
It's
range
conditioning.
of words. We just use like a few core
Yeah.
feelings: happy, sad, angry, mad. You know, there's a range of them that we should be using.
So then how do we, and I, you know, whoever wants this input, like, what are your personal thoughts, each of you, on how we can get to a point where we're communicating daily without it being where it's something that escalates to a point of negativity?
Well, kind of in the same vein, not to cut you off, sorry. They gave me my therapist gave me an emotion vocabulary wheel. So it has those core vocabulary words, and then it has things that fall into that category that you reach out. And he says, whenever you're talking about it, make sure you use 2 of these in each circle or each level.
Right.
Because he was like, if you can't get to the last level, then you haven't explained it fully. So that's been helping me out a tremendous amount and just helping me stay calm and then just stop, think, and then speak.
Before it snowballs.
Yeah.
Wardell gave me the fish eye, so I'm wondering.
No, I was about to. Sorry.
So I'm curious
No.
what.
I was about to, well, and he just took some words out of my mouth, but when you talk about emotional vocabulary, I'm like, what if we were taught that as kids?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence. But even what you were saying about, well, if you're talking about what you're feeling, how do you like know when you're getting to a term of, you know, what's negativity? And I don't know that answer either, because there's times when, like, I know there are people who will ask me, you know, what's wrong? Something's wrong. And depending on the situation, sometimes I will answer or not, but I also know I can bring a room down. And I'm like, I don't want to, you know, it's like, so I'm like, so it's like, how do you, you know, pick? Because what is it? There's another expression like pain shared is pain halved, but that doesn't happen all the time, you know. And I've had it both ways, you know, and then I'll start feeling, well, I don't want to put any of this on, you know, my stuff on somebody else, because there's the awareness that even psychologists, you know, at one point in time, they were the profession that had the highest rate of suicides, because a lot of people don't understand. Psychologists have to go see a psychologist, because, like you said, they're absorbing that energy. They got to get it out too.
Yeah.
So then it's like there's that, like, what do you say? What do you do? Whatever. And why isn't our society, you know, built around this? Why? Hey, just say what you feel at any point in time. From time before 4 or 5, say what you feel. But we don't do that.
Yeah. One of my best friends is a clinical psychiatrist, and when we first met, like 20 years ago, She was like, yeah, I'm going to my therapy appointment. And I'm like, what? But you're the expert. You have all the answers. And she was like, no one has all the answers. You have to continually seek answers, no matter who you are, what station at life you're in. So I think that's something that's really good to remember.
For me, if you said pick a word, for me a word would be trust. I don't trust people. Like I could be in a room like he gossiping, if you telling me somebody else been what I look like telling you anything I'm going through.
Right.
That's that vulnerability thing.
Yeah, I just don't trust people to.
Yeah.
Had I not went out for my birthday in September, my cousin, because I never got out. He like, man, get out the house. Let's get. So I get out the house. I go out, and my eyes, the way they look now, was bloodshot red. Like my pupil was like purple. It was just bad. And growing up, like, what's wrong with your eyes? I just got tired of hearing it. I was like, hey, let's go, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's when I went on live and just like let it all out. Like, I have this rare eye disease. I'm blind. Like, it just. I couldn't tell certain people, like, this is why this was going on with me. Then I got stuff going on at home. Like, I just didn't trust people with the information that was going on with me, so I just held it all in.
Yeah.
Something in that vein that has helped me, and not to switch it in a total different direction, I actually found forgiveness to be a really big piece
Come on now,
of my
what?
mental health.
Yeah.
Because I had a hard time trusting people, and I did not realize how many things from my past I was still holding on to, and it was weighing on me so heavily. And as I started digging into, because kind of what brought me out of my anxiety and depression was I reconnected with my faith, and through that, I was having so many like negative thoughts in my head. I was just listening to sermons all day, listening to scriptures, because in my mind it was, I'm going to push out all the bad by putting negative in, other way around. Push out all the negative by putting positive in.
Right.
So I was just constantly just engulfing myself in sermons, and I started listening to a sermon series on forgiveness. And when I actually went back and realized that the first person I need to forgive is myself, then I was able to get rid of those negative things, because I had been beating myself up so long. One of the stories that I share, I have an older daughter as well. I don't know if you know I have an older daughter.
Yes, I remember.
I have a
you sharing.
10-year-old daughter, and there was a paternity issue initially, and I was still holding that against her. I was still angry about it, but in my mind, I was well past it. I was like, I moved on. I don't care. I'm married now, but I would hold on to it under the pretense of, I got to protect myself. I got to make sure no woman ever get me like that again. And what made the forgiveness click in my head is I said, well, I've been married for 8 years. My wife hasn't done that to me. We're not having any more kids. What am I trying to be protect? Like, what situation would I be in where a woman would do that to me? There's no situation like that. And essentially what I realized, it was like me being in the desert and carrying around a life jacket just in case I ran into some water. It was like, yes, it's something that can save your life, quote unquote, but you don't need it in the desert. Right. Let it go. It's just extra weight on you. And once I kind of tapped into that forgiveness piece of it and actually wanted to forgive people and myself and other people, that's when I started feeling better, because I didn't beat myself up anymore. It was just over and done with. It doesn't matter why I didn't do this at that time.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's
How many
huge.
things are we carrying around that we don't have to? How many relationships? How many negative words from our mother, our aunt, your uncle, your father are we carrying around and we holding in that we need to release and let go?
But we need to acknowledge also, because that analogy was good. You're carrying that jacket around because something happened.
Yep.
So there's that thing about, which is PTSD, right? Something happened, you're reacting to it. The thing that happened is no longer occurring, but you're still reacting to it.
Yep.
So, but that's a legitimate thing too. It's just, first you have to acknowledge, okay, well, this is why, this is what happened. This is what's happening now. I have to let go. But it's like, it's got to be the whole thing. And that's a lot of us are carrying that, a lot of that kind of stuff around, reacting to things that aren't there anymore. But that part is human too. So it's like beginning in forgiving yourself is that's the hardest person to forgive. The hardest person to forgive.
We're hardest on ourselves. Yeah. You were talking about acknowledging, when something has actually happened before moving on from it. And I think we spoke about this briefly when I called you. It is my personal belief, and then there's some studies I've read that have, backed this up, that one of the things that have happened to all of us that we may not have an active memory of, but we have genetic memory, we come from people that were enslaved. We come from people that were abused and exploited. And I think my question for you is, even that's something that we are not actively experiencing now in this timeline, the body keeps score. The body remembers. Like genetically, there are things that there's fear that's passed on to us.
Absolutely.
There's anger, there's resentment. How do we get down to those things? 'Cause I really do believe that is a huge part of the healing that we have to do. Where do we begin?
Well, this is a part of it.
Yeah.
Conversations need to happen. Acknowledgement needs to happen. An honest openness, appreciation that it did happen. So if you are in, what's this, 2023, and you can't acknowledge that slavery did happen, then there's a problem.
Right.
And there are people today that believe that there are no genetic, there are no emotional, there's no spiritual, there's no physical, intellectual damage done from slavery.
Right.
And so there's a psychological thing that happens to us. Just if you've been incarcerated for any amount of time, you understand how you can get out of jail, be free, and still have a mindset that you're imprisoned. So imagine the bondage of slavery. Imagine how that is like superimposed and impressed on us. And then as a people, our self-worth and self-esteem is so low and diminished that we just do things that are just, sometimes it's like, oh my God, how can we do this? Or how can she look like that? Or how can he say that to her? Or how can he wear that? Or and so sometimes it's the things that we've learned from our families.
Yes.
And it's just handed down.
Right.
And instead of pulling together and listening to each other and validating each other, we fight against each other. We bicker against each other. We call each other's name, or call each other out our names, or label each other. That's not productive at all. It's not going to help where we are at all. So first we have to acknowledge who we are. Starts there.
Right. Who we are as a people and who we are individually. And the reason why I brought that up, I was having a conversation with someone about just certain facets of, the Black community at large, and how it's my belief that some of those things have been, not everything that is passed down is like a family heirloom. Not everything is a grand legacy. Like there's pain that can be passed down as well. And the person, absolutely, always. And the person sort of expressed to me that you have to get over that that didn't happen. We're not experiencing it, but some of the behaviors, are, if I think about personally, like my own grandmother who lived to be 96, and if I think about sitting at her feet and her sharing stories with me about her mother who was enslaved, like that's painful for me. That's deeply painful. But it's because I'm a woman, it's a little bit easier for me, or it's a little bit more acceptable for me to, tear up when I talk about my grandma. Like nobody's gonna check me and be like, girl, get it together, because I'm a woman. But I know as men, thinking about those things that happen in your family lineage can be, because it's your family, like it's even deeper than just, oh, somebody at my job looked at me crazy or called me a name, or, I don't know where I was going with that, but.
We're like two sides to a coin, though.
Absolutely.
Black man, black woman.
Yes.
And so.
And we need each other. Okay, sorry.
Absolutely. we do. And so when we come from our different perspectives of work or whatever we do, when we come home, that should be a place of solace and peace, and where we can fortify, regroup, affirm, validate, and get out and do it again, and build and work together. But it's not, oftentimes not like that.
Yeah, the battles are supposed to be outside. This is supposed to be where you're supposed to leak out. It's supposed to be left at the door, but yeah.
It's not always the case. Yeah.
There was, in talking about the whole thing with slavery, one of my ex-girlfriends was like, she was from New Orleans also, but we met here. And she said at one point in time, she had found out, she was going to be visiting Louisiana, and she had found out about this this tour, like a plantation tour that they had. But this one was interesting because she said what they did was they did a live action reenactment.
Wow.
So this is what they did. They told the people, said, listen, they said, if you're going to do what they're going to do, they're going to have people at different stations in this plantation as they went through it. They said, the people who are going through, those people are going to talk to you the same way slaves were spoken to during that time. And they said, nobody's going to touch you, but they said, we're warning you now, it's going to be very intense. So it's like, but if you have to get out, get out. And she said, you know, when she was going in, she said, you know, she was like there may have been like one other black woman there. Everybody else was white. And she said when they came out the other end, with everybody yelling and screaming and cussing them, degrading them, all kinds of ways, everybody was in tears. All the white people were in tears. The two of them just looked at each other like, and I was like, I think they should have that all, all over the place.
Yeah, tell me the name of that place later so I don't go.
Yeah, I definitely want to go.
Yeah, I know why they spend their money on it. No.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you brought that up because I know one of my goals is to spend 3 months in Africa very soon. And I want to go to the coast and go to like Elmina Castle and all of those places. And I have friends who have been and said as soon as, it wasn't even about an interaction with anyone. It was literally like the energy and the spirit of being in this place. And they just broke down, like just seeing it, just being there. So obviously something is being activated in the body, you know, even though they weren't physically there before, their ancestors were, you know. So I just think that's an important part to acknowledge that sometimes our pain goes beyond what we're, a lot of it can be attributed to the world we live in now, but some of it, you know, goes much further back.
What's amazing to me is how far we are away from a particular event. It shapes your perspective. So a white man or white woman can go to a place like that and try to experience that, immerse themselves in that, and feel what it was like. But it's different versus you going to the coast and walking into where your ancestors were literally stripped of their kingdom, their queendom, and sent off to God knows where to be enslaved. And by the way, that we were doing that to ourselves. But how different is that today? We're still doing that to ourselves. And so your perspective is everything. So you really have to try to do your best to become the best person you can be and be aware of yourself. Because the person next to you might not have that same walk. They might not, they're definitely not where you are, right? So before we came and sat down together, we didn't know each other's story, but we're learning pieces of that. And hopefully as we move forward, it'll connect us and bond us in a way such that we'll become stronger, better, and more loving towards each other.
Yeah, that compassion and empathy is big.
Critical.
It's huge. So I want to ask you about, you know, in terms of mental health, you know, we hear it because so many events have happened, especially since COVID. Like we hear mental health, mental health, mental health. And I don't think the conversation always goes, you know, deep enough below the surface as it needs to. You know, mental health is not, I remember you referencing the body as a unit earlier. So I would love to talk about how mental health is also how we take care of our bodies, what we put in, like the food we eat, you know, getting out in nature. Have any of you had an experience with doing things outside of, you know, maybe talking to a therapist or meditating or whatever? Have you found anything useful that help you feel good all over? Because the mental and the physical, I think in this Western world that we live in, everybody treats it like it's two different things. Like you got to take care of your mental health and then you got to go to the gym and you got to work out. But we're not made like that. Like we're whole beings. So
just to just quickly speak, when somebody has a traumatic event, one of the best or most effective ways to help them is when you treat the whole body, the whole person. Studies have been shown that people who go through or are able to do whole body treatment modalities, they recover better. They recover fuller. So yes, really, 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 really critical. Whole wellness, your whole body, your mind, your spirit, your intellect and emotion. You got to treat the whole person, and not separate. Treat it as if it's its own entity when it's not.
Yeah.
Even myself, that was what my therapist initially suggested, even before we started going through, because we only, have an hour at a time, but it was, okay, in between time, get out, go do some physical activity, watch what you're eating. And even admittedly, as I told you, kind of reconnecting with my faith and what you just said, until that point, I was doing all those other things, and I still wasn't really getting better until I dealt with also my spirit as well. Then I started getting better. So no, I definitely agree with you. Like, you have to hit everything, because I was working out. I was going through all the tools that they were giving me. I was eating better even when I was eating, and it still was not helping until I dealt with every piece of me.
Yeah.
This might sound crazy, but if you're able to, ground yourself.
Take off your shoes.
Take off your shoes.
Get in the dirt. Yes, sir.
Yes. Sometimes this also might sound crazy, but if you do that and it feels uncomfortable, it's because you're allergic to the planet you're living on, right? So you gotta refamiliarize yourself. You have to submerge yourself into your surrounding, right? We're like foreign objects to the earth that we live on because of technology and our lifestyle and the things that we're doing and the things that we're eating, et cetera, et cetera. So, you gotta ground yourself, connect yourself with the things that are around you.
Yeah, because this is our home.
It is.
Like, this is our home.
For now. It's mine for a minute.
Right.
And I haven't done that in like 40 years.
It's amazing.
Growing up.
Do it tomorrow.
Growing up growing up in New Orleans, like I said, like I told Kirsten, my family's from Southern Louisiana, so Blackman's Parish. So every weekend, vacation, holiday, I got shipped off to the country, bayou territory, whether or not I wanted to or not. So we always walked around barefoot back then, all the time. They had to tell us to, put our shoes back on. But it's like, I don't think so it's been like 40 years, more than 40 years since that. And it's funny because somebody recently was talking to someone, they were freaking out off of the fact that I walked barefoot in my apartment. They're like, no, put shoes. Like, but it's carpet. Like, no, put shoes on, put slippers on. Like, but what's wrong with? At least I'm feeling something, with my feet. So it's like, I need grass, I need dirt.
Absolutely.
But it's funny because Black folks, we have ways of saying things. We have all these expressions, and sometimes we don't really think about what we're saying. Like, I've heard people say, man, touch grass. You need to touch grass. What they're actually saying is you need to go and put your feet, you need to touch the grass. The earth has like electromagnetic properties.
There are minerals in the earth.
Yes, speak on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we were told, even when we were kids, was, to go back on the negative thing, if you keep walking around with no shoes on, it's going to make you have big feet. Why we cared, I don't know. Who cares if I got big feet? But that's what we told. Why put shoes on? Keep doing that, you can get big feet. But we just ran around anyway.
Right, yeah. And think about how happy you are as a child running around without your shoes off, without your shoes on all day. But as an adult, I think we're so consumed about, man, I don't want my neighbors looking at me like I'm crazy because I'm outside with no shoes on, or I don't want to go to the park and carry my shoes. But that's just, a simple thing that we can do. And then also in terms of nutrition, I would love to hear, because I'm sure you have like empirical data to support. I'm sure you have.
Much credit.
No, but it's also true that we can be mindful of what we're putting in our bodies, because that literally feeds our brain.
Did you use that word mindful on purpose?
Yes. Everything's deliberate. But I'm trying not to talk too much because, I read a lot, and so I really want you all to lead the conversation without me inserting too much of my...
Let me point out one thing, though. Just in talking about taking our shoes off and going outside or whatever, think about how many people nowadays are living in apartment complexes, and there's just nothing but concrete around. So it's like that's one of the things that's affecting us too. That's pushing against that whole idea. Well, I can't go put my shoes. There's you know, the asphalt will burn my feet or whatever. Everybody doesn't have a house to be able to go out in a yard, and so that's another thing.
Yeah. But we live in a very institutionalized, I mean, there's concrete everywhere, but you know, we can get in a car, we can go to a park and walk around and just breathe and be out in nature. And it sounds silly, it sounds very like, you know, one of my girlfriends says, you're so kumbaya, you're always talking about, you know, being out in nature, but it is so, if you have to get in your car and drive somewhere out of the way, just to have that peace, just to be by a body of water, just to hear some ducks, just to, you know, breathe and actually smell the dirt instead of smelling like your neighbor's tide, you know, when they're doing laundry. There's all sorts of things that we can do to get outside of those environments. There's a little hidden park by my office. It's little, small, you'll miss it. And what I do oftentimes at a certain level in therapy is when the client's ready, we take a walk. And we'll walk. And then there's lessons along the way. Sometimes sometimes we have to do some work to find our peace. And sometimes the peace that we want is right under our nose. Life will offer up distractions daily. It's up to you. It's your responsibility to find your peace.
Second by second, second by second.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, it took me to realize years ago in looking for my peace that I suddenly realized, like you said, it was right under my nose. It was making art. I didn't realize that. It's like, so, and the way I look at it is like, you know, life and society, you're burning up energy and then you need to replenish it. And then for me, that was, and I didn't realize it. So, and there are things that happen that push me away from making art. And then I have to realize, well, I have to get back to that because that's how I connect. That's my rejuvenation. That's, you know, my linkage with God and, you know, the universe. But there are things in our society that push us away from those things and keep us from seeing those things.
Yeah.
All those distractions, tons and tons and tons of distractions.
Yeah.
That was before social media. So there's that too.
KK, I'm curious because we go back. I remember, didn't you play basketball when we were in?
I did.
Yeah. So like for you, I'm sure that, you know, the past few months you haven't been able to actively play, but like for you, what is your, because like for him it's his art. What do you do?
Coaching.
Right.
Yeah, just being around kids. That was my piece. Like until, I mean, I haven't done it since July, but that was always my go-to. Or I'll go play basketball. Just, that was it. It was always basketball with me.
So then I guess the question is, if someone has peace and solace in some activity or some way of expressing themselves and they're not able to do that, what do you do to replace it?
Because I was lost.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel that?
So let me say this. I try to understand and help. For every one, I'm saying negative, but source of an output that you have, you need at least 5 things to pour back into you.
Wow.
The things that take from us don't ever stop. It don't stop. It just keeps. So it's your responsibility. And think of it not just as a negative. Think of it as a relationship. Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, kids, your job. You need 5 things. So it could be athletics, could be sports, it could be church, scripture, praying, meditation, physical. You need 5 things that's going to pour into you. And that ratio is not like set in stone, but you need to have multiple inputs, right, for your outputs, for one of your outputs. Because if you don't, you're going to deplete yourself. And we're not like robots with sustainable energy sources that can just go on and on like the energy. No, you're gonna get tired. You're gonna get sleepy, you're going to get hungry, you're going to get sick. You will.
Yes, life.
That's
That's the
interesting.
first time I've heard 5. I'm sorry, go ahead, Wardell.
No,
At least 5.
The
Woo.
5 is interesting because it's a weird, interesting coincidence because they said that Japanese martial arts masters always believed that they should have 5 disciplines. So whatever the martial art was that they also had to learn like calligraphy or something with healing, and it was always 5. It's like so they had to have the martial art and 4 other things.
Think about how many people, relationships, responsibilities you have in your life. Just think about it for a second. And some of those things, they're not going to stop, right? They need you to be there, right? Whether it's a job or a child. And so if you don't prioritize your wellness and making sure that you're topped off, who's going to do it? The child can't pour into you as they're a child.
Yeah, very needy.
Your job is what it is, right? So when you walk in through that door, the demands start, the job starts.
Yeah.
So it's your responsibility to take your wellness and make it a priority.
On that point, and in the darkest piece of the depression that I was going through, that was my issue. I felt like I was living my life for everybody else, and I was tired of responsibility. Because that's why I was like, I was never at a suicidal point, but I would tell my wife and people around me, I was like, I just want to move to Mexico and wear a poncho and a sombrero and sell fruit on the street, because it just sounds so peaceful with everything I got going on.
That's why for a man, a woman is like everything, because that's the essence of the relationship, right? So when you work and you come home tired, you look for the peace, rest. And so for a woman as well, right? Rest is different than sleep, right? That's not, sleep is, and we do our bodies a disservice all the time, I believe, because like our phones, we plug our phones up, right? We don't let our phones go, especially if you're a teenager, you don't let your phone go 8%, right?
Grown-ups don't.
No.
The teenagers.
Some people do. Some people let it go low. Some people let it go low. That's how that person operates. But we plug our phones up.
And we don't plug it.
But we don't do that for ourselves.
Right.
Wow, that's oof.
So every single night, like, you gotta unplug. People who are not on social media and who don't are not, I won't say addicted, it's an addiction, but who are not compelled. I'm in awe of them, because that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing.
So let's talk about social media then, because I feel like that is a real driving factor in why so many people are grappling with certain things like depression or feeling like you're not worthy, because we're in this state of constantly comparing ourselves to other people and their relationships, or their secular opportunities, their jobs, their vacations, their whatever. And because we're inundated with it, how do you think that we can better navigate living in a social media driven world? Like, for me, I take sabbaticals and I'll like peace out for 30 days.
But I was going to ask you, how do we think we can operate in a world that is continually plugged in, that's continually asking us to do? How do we operate in a world? How do we continue in a world that's asking that of us?
If we looked at social media as a thing, one of the things that we have, like, let's say we wanted to go ride a bicycle, right? We already have it in our minds. Oh, well, I'm only going to ride for an hour, and then we're done with that, and then I'm going to do something else. But with social media, it's like once you get on, you're stuck. You're there.
You get
know,
lost in
for-
it.
yeah,
Your
you get lost in
synapses
it.
start
So-
firing
right,
differently.
So why don't we always say, okay, if I do this, it's either going to be for 1 hour this time, this day, and that's it. Or maybe I'll pick it up for 10 minutes, 5 or 6 times a day, but we don't do that. But social media itself is designed to prevent you from doing that. It was, this is where their money comes from. They have it set up so that you're stuck in it. There's all kinds of behavioral stuff that's been done to make sure that you keep it in your hand.
Right.
They spend a lot of money in that.
So KK, when you were off, because you were off of social media for like 3 months almost?
Yes.
Good for you.
So yeah, that's an accomplishment because a lot of people can't go that long. So obviously because you didn't have your site at that time, you couldn't see it.
I couldn't
so
see
you didn't really have
Yeah.
a choice. But
Yeah.
how did you have like withdrawal? Did it affect you not being connected that way?
It didn't, because for the simple fact I couldn't see nothing. I wasn't missing nothing, so it was. And I've heard people say that people get down because they see how other people social media, like they on vacation. But the way I see social media is it's like Sports Center. You post the highlights. Nobody is gonna be on social media telling you, "Oh, I got laid off," or "I got," and I'm like, my check was short. I'm in the hole. Like, nobody does that. So I don't understand why. Well, I don't see why people look at somebody, oh, they always traveling. Maybe they were saving money for 2 years to go on this vacation. You're just not gonna see a picture like, I'm gonna go next week. It don't happen like that.
Right.
So but back to I didn't miss it, But when I got back on it, it's just what it was.
Yeah. But you dropped a gem though, because you said it's highlights. So I think
That's all it
understanding
is.
that it's a highlight reel, because I do know that there have been people so drawn, like so sucked in by it that they are severely depressed because
Yeah.
they can't floss, they
How
can't
everybody-
do what everyone else is doing. And what is that expression? Comparison is the thief of joy, I think.
Yes.
That's
Comparison is the
that's
thief
a
of
real
joy.
thing. And I think that is a way to protect our mental health as well, by limiting
Yeah.
what we are consuming, because we're consuming it,
Just because you see a couple at a 5-star restaurant, how you know when they go home they in 2 different rooms? Like, it's,
It happens.
It's highlights. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Actually, Kirsten, you had mentioned to me about I'm always very transparent. That's part of the reason why I'm so transparent about even sometimes negative things I have going on, because I know people will look at things that I'm doing as a highlight reel, and I'm like, I'm a regular person too.
Yeah.
Like, even me sharing the mental health battle that I went through, because I know it's people, because I've had people say it to me as I've been going through, like, well, you have a good job, you got a good family, you got this, and I was like, yeah, and I was shut up in my room for like 3 months. Like, you need to know that, like, it's okay to do that, and you need to say something, or those things don't actually bring you joy, or whatever the case may be, about it. So I always try to be super transparent. Like, no, I don't just put like every little thing out there, but
Of course.
yeah, like I still am
You have
transparent.
some
Like,
balance
right,
in
exactly.
what you're
Like,
sharing.
exactly, this is what I've got going on. It's not just always flowers, because even my platform is all about like my journey to it. So I can't just tell people the good side, but never say anything about the bad side.
Right.
And for me, it took me a while to get to a point where I don't even really care what anybody has to say about it. Like, it doesn't matter to me.
So how do you get to that place where you don't care? Because that's freedom. That's very liberating.
Well, it's just Charlamagne, listen to him a lot, but we were like, you can't hold anything against me. If it's my truth, like, it is what it is. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I don't have to engage with it unless I, even asking people, if somebody, you were like, well, Warren, you're a fraud. I'm like, okay, so now what?
Yeah.
You're like, so what do we do now? Okay, yeah, sure.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, what do we do now? Because nobody has anything after that, because they're expecting a response and
Right.
back and forth. I'm like, okay, that's how you feel. Like, I'm me. I know what I do. I know whatever it may be. And it took a while for me to get there, but it was just, I kind of got there from an efficiency standpoint. I didn't have time to like argue with people all day long about what they don't think or what they do think or whatever. I don't have time.
Yeah.
So
You got there through practicality.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
That's one of the things, that makes or breaks. It's like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I mean, but because you're thinking about, you were thinking about what you had to do, and you weren't thinking about the
Exactly.
other stuff, and
Exactly.
that's one of the ways it breaks through. But the other, danger to that is, it's like you're saying, well, how do we get to the point where we don't care about stuff. But then there's also the danger of slipping in that other world where it's like you're callous and you know,
Yeah.
and it's always hard to.
It's like a tightrope walk.
Right, so it's like it's like you're over in one spot, you have to come all the way over here, but you can't go over there. So it's like you have to move from over here, but hit the brakes
Yeah.
because you don't want to become callous and unfeeling, and you know.
And I probably could have used a better word, maybe not care, but choose to withhold your energy.
Yeah.
Because that's a powerful
Or be
thing by not
discriminative. Yeah, be
giving your
discriminative.
energy to certain things. Yeah.
KK, even to your point, on the other side, I kind of fell into the comparison thing, knowing that it was a highlight reel, just because as I was building like my online platform, I'm looking at other creators, kind of seeing what's popular, this, that, and the third, and you find the ones that you like, what they're posting, those kind of things, and I'm seeing it, and it's like, well, why isn't my highlight reel quite as good as they? Like they're not working harder than me, you know, and you just seeing it, and it's seeping in. Because I said I actually went the other way. I got rid of like so much negative stuff on my social media.
But you don't even see all the
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and all I saw was super, super positive people and all these things. And I'm seeing that all the time. And it makes me feel like I'm at the bottom of the barrel compared to all these, people that are at the top or whatever you want to call it. So that was something that I dealt with very heavily. And I realized that I needed balance on mine. Like, as I was kind of talking before we got started, when I was talking about the black and white thinking, is one of the cognitive distortions, is like you either in the hood or you in the NBA. But there's a whole lot of middle ground at it. And so that was something that I have been actively working on, understanding that there's a middle ground and you're still successful even if you're in the middle ground.
Right.
But now I think about it, the answer to your question, I think what you did was that is the only answer, because you have to be going towards your positive thing. Because if you sit around trying to think to yourself, I'm not going to do a particular thing, then you're thinking about that thing.
Yep.
You're still giving it energy.
Yeah, you're still giving it energy. So you just have to just go. That's like pretty much the only way. Go.
Yeah, I don't give any energy on social media. I post just for conversations. Remember when I did the post about the submissive and everybody was attacking me? He wasn't saying it. Like, I didn't even explain myself. I was just like, go ahead, do it. They was attacking me. I'm like, whatever. And you came out, I was like, that's not what he was saying. I was just like, hey.
Well, I think we live in an era where people are very eager to have confrontations. But if you do inner work, those things don't, you know that things are not a personal attack. It's because someone else has something they're projecting onto you. So I think it's healthy just navigating social media in general to remind that, everything's not personal. Most of it's not personal.
It's not.
But it is something that really affects people deeply. Like I know people personally that have had serious episodes or issues tied directly to social media. And I think for Black folk, it is one of the easiest types of media for us to consume. It's accessible, it's affordable. Maybe I can't go to this NBA game I want to go to, but I can jump on and look at, the stats or whatever, and then other people can have a conversation. But then before you know that, you're sucked into some other realm that you didn't even intend on. So,
but somebody needs to do an analysis, because with that, it's like there's a thing where if you had 100,000 followers, you could read like 1,000 comments. Oh my God, you're awesome, you're cool. And there's one person like, you suck. And
it's like a dagger.
Yeah.
Why does it bother you?
It completely
How you
does
see
that whole
that
1,000. I want to see somebody actually do an analysis. Like, what's the balance? Is it 500
Right.
to 1? Is it 1,000 to 1?
Right, but that's a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
That's a real
It
thing.
is.
So how do you suggest, and this isn't necessarily even about social media, when we're presented with something that is very negative or something that drains our energy, how do you redirect from that? So that's not your nexus point. That's not what you're focused on.
Lock it off. I mean, just like they were saying, like it's your responsibility. And you could go down the rabbit hole and hours later, give yourself 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever you need to do. But you have to be the gatekeeper.
Right.
You can't let social media do it. That they're getting paid to do that. They're businesses, they're companies, they're organizations that spend a lot of money
Oh, absolutely.
on
Billions.
what your marketing habits are, what
Right.
you like. Yeah, your phone's listening to you.
Yeah. But even outside of social media, I think that's just like an avatar for the bigger, you know, when we find ourselves faced with something that's really like we think this is just going to be the end of us because it's so heavy. You say lock it off or block it off. What do you recommend? And I guess what I'm asking is, what are some like things that people can do like right now? If there's someone watching right now and they're stressed about, you know, the person that works with them is a jerk and they know they have to deal with this person every single day and it's really getting to them, just as an example, what is something that people can do like in the moment to kind of shift their focus?
So we talked about grounding, right?
Yes.
So simple thing you can do, oftentimes I do this on the video, I'm doing teletherapy, person's not in the physical office, just tell them sit down, relax, take some deep breaths, lean back, ground yourself, block out the current stress, your work, the thing that's bothering you at this current moment, maybe your relationship, maybe your school, your grades, a parent, maybe you're struggling with grief, somebody passed away, lost relationship. And so clear your mind of all of the things that you might be bothered with, or I don't want to say plaguing you, that you're ruminating and thinking about over and over again. And take a minute and a moment to be present where you are. Listen to the clock that's ticking, or think of yourself on a beach and take some nice deep breaths. Inhale, hold for a second, and then slowly breathe out. And also what I do is I get people to give themselves hugs.
Oh, I do that. I'm so glad that somebody told me I was weird for doing that.
Well, no, so I'll tell them literally, like, hold your hands up, and then, you know, start, you know, from your head to your toe,
Right.
releasing the stress, and actually, literally, feel your muscles, feel your bones and your tissues and your heart. Like, be present in this moment.
Right.
And then hug yourself, touch yourself, hold yourself. Take a deep breath, squeeze tighter, and then slowly release.
Right.
So that's something you can do at your desk. And you don't have to even be so demonstrative about it. You can do it silently. And your boss, who's getting on your nerves, or your coworker who might be chatty Cathy, or whoever, you can just steal away a moment.
Right.
That's all it takes. And come back, and then you got to get back to reality, but it just gives you a moment to rest,
Right.
to find peace, even in chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even in chaos.
So I just got the signal from my producer that we have 10 minutes, even though there's a ton of stuff that I think we all could probably go on and on about. One thing that I did want to talk about before we end is the difference between, and I don't know if I'm using the proper terminology, but the difference between like a situational aspect of mental health that has someone down and then something that's clinical. Because not everything is, you know, our circumstances and our environment and relationships. There are instances where people are having a chemical reaction,
Right.
and their brain is releasing something into their body that they don't have control over. And I'd love to hear you talk about that a bit, because I think in our communities, that's not always understood either. So on top of the just walk it off, just get over it, just whatever. Like sometimes even having a friend to talk to or having somebody give you a hug, it's just not going to cut it.
Yeah, it's not.
So how do you recommend people, if they've tried all these other modalities and things just don't seem to be working, how would a person go forward to find out if there's a chemical?
So there's a lot to that question. Like there's a lot to us, so there's a lot.
Right.
So some things are chronic. Some things there might be a predisposition, a family issue, like diabetes, like depression can run in the family,
Right.
anxiety can, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, right? There are like more, like 2 to 4 maybe million people who have a mental illness. It's probably greater than that in America. So there are a lot of pieces. Stress. Someone can experience grief, a death, a loss, an adjustment disorder. Somebody could have depressive symptoms because they moved. It happens a lot in the military. You know, you transition from one post to another, and your family has to move, or you might move, you know, before your family does. So cyclical, like every 18 months, you know, in the military, there's going to be mass change. So families are going to be disrupted and uprooted. So there are a lot of components to why someone might be feeling a particular way. Okay, so one of the most important pieces for us is we got to go to the doctor. We don't go to the doctor.
That's what I was, yeah.
So that's something that we don't do for lots of reasons. Some of it's
some
economic.
of it's valid, yeah.
Some of it's we can't afford it. We don't have insurance. We haven't. Your father didn't do it. Your mother didn't do it.
Or we just don't trust them.
Right. Or, you know, we got this dysfunctional relationship with the ER. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't go to seek medical attention. That's where a lot of that stuff might get picked up. Where, you know, you might not have seen a doctor for a long time, and some of these things could have been picked up. Man, we're bad at that. We don't go to the doctor for nothing.
That's what I was like, it's coming. I really do believe that one of the things that could save so many of the brothers in our community is just getting to a doctor. And it's like nobody enjoys it. It's not fun. It's not like kicking it, you know, at a sports bar. It's not meant to be fun. It's meant to be, you know, a tool to get you to healing. If you are a man
and you are listening to this podcast, go to the doctor.
I ask my homeboys all the time, hey, when let's say you got lab work, I always ask that. Like, just go, man. Just get lab work, just to see, just to get a sense of where you're at, like, health-wise.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think it's maybe the fear of not knowing, but it's always better to know if something is wrong, because then you can start to correct it. You can formulate a plan. You can have support, you know. So yes, please go to the doctor.
Kirsten, one other piece from my personal experience with that, I've never had an issue going to the doctor, but even during this process, I did start antidepressant meds or any anxiety meds. And it was because of my personal stigma behind them. I was like, I don't want to take any meds. I don't want to take any meds. I don't want to. And my doctor was like, but it's going to help you get there quicker. With it, she was like, it's not permanent. It'll help you get there quicker. And it did help. It did honestly help. And even just wanting to break that stigma down. Matter of fact, I had a conversation earlier with my wife today about it, because I was like, I'm ready to stop taking these. Because I was like, I just don't like taking pills. And she was like, well, just, you know, wait until you good. I was like, I'm good. I was like, I'm good, but, you know, just waiting on the doctor to take me off. So I think just breaking that stigma behind it, that, you know, because where a lot of people get bothered is if you still have a bad day, because you can still have emotions. And somebody, did you take your meds today? Like, okay, yes, I took my meds. Yes,
you're still allowed to be human and
like
feel
you're
things.
just having a bad day. That's all. It's not an actual issue or something outrageous. But kind of back to the panic attack, not to go all the way back there, but like even just how that felt, it was like a pit in the stomach. You can't breathe. Like literally a few months ago when it was really cool outside, it was like 11:30, and I was sitting outside just so I could like breathe normally. And I'm just sitting outside, just out there, short sleeves. It's in the low 50s, and I'm just sitting outside in the breeze, so I could breathe, because I just could not breathe. All for an extended amount of time. So.
Thank you for sharing that, though, because a lot of people wouldn't even say, like, I'm taking any type of medication because they feel like that's a sign of weakness. But it's like it's like living in a house and maybe something is broken and you have a toolbox, but you're like, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to
become
use
a
it.
sign of weakness, though.
We'll talk about that on the next one.
Everything,
Serious.
I'll tell you straight up where it came from me, the stigma of not bothering with talking to this. Normally I'm transparent, but when I got to the point where I couldn't sleep, I was like, there's nobody on the planet that can sleep for me. So I don't care what anybody thinks about what I have to do to get myself right. I was like, nobody can sleep for me. I was like, so I can't sleep at night. I'm like, whatever I need to do, let me do that so I can regulate myself and get back right.
Well, thank you all so much I'm sure we could go further and further. And this is something I would like to do again. Our producer, we're talking about maybe making it a quarterly thing. I don't know what that looks like just yet, but I really appreciate you each for being vulnerable and for sharing and for letting people our viewers know that, it is okay to be human, it's okay to feel, and it's also okay to seek help when we're not well. Is there anything that any of you would like to say in closing, or anything really important that you want to leave with?
Just talk to somebody. Like, if you're going through something, you can't do it alone. Like, it's not gonna go away. It's like you're not gonna just wake up one day and just over with. Like, you have to talk to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
To reemphasize the thing about just stopping and just kind of just being, that actually starts revealing to you how many of your own personal mechanisms are imposed on you and reactionary, as opposed to which you start seeing it then just by sitting still. And in my case, bicycle riding, walking, it becomes meditative. It's like it frees your brain up.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Then Wardell actually said, being aware when you're not yourself, actually paying that attention and not just ignoring it and pushing it out the window and kind of sweeping it under the rug, because that can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you know when you're not yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, we all know.
Yeah.
We know. We can only lie to ourselves for so long. We know. Well.
Men, don't be afraid to cry. There is power in your tears.
And we will end on that note. Thank you, everyone who has taken time out of their evening to join us today. Thank you to these wonderful brothers here. Again, we're VODPOD Media. I also want to thank Rooted Vegan Cuisine for sponsoring our show today and providing us sustenance. And, I just personally would like to say healing is a journey. You don't have to rush to feel like you have arrived somewhere. It takes work. And so do the things you need to do. Go to the doctor, treat yourself well, create spaces for yourself where you are valued and loved and respected. And I wish everyone peace and love and wellness.
Peace and love.
All right, that's it. It's a wrap.